Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there, and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. You have reached episode number 344, entitled Dan Knauss on Why You Should Harden WordPress. It was published on Thursday, the 5th of October, 2023. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and before we get over to Dan and the interview there, a few bits of housekeeping. The first thing to mention is that Black Friday is coming up. As we do every year, we put together an exhaustive list of all of the best WordPress deals. That could be hosting, that could be plugins, blocks, themes, anything like that. We put them all on one giant page, and it's searchable and filterable, so it makes it very easy for you to find all of the deals. If you would like to be a part of that, head to wpbuilds.com/black. One more time, wpbuilds.com/black. And over there, you're going to be able to find a button, and that button is called Add a Deal. And if you add a deal, then I will hopefully put it on the page. There are some caveats around that. Obviously, it has to be related to WordPress and so on. But if you feel that you have a product or a service that you would like to feature on our page to increase your sales, as I say, sometimes this page is viewed, in air quotes, quite a lot. So yeah, that's something that you might want to consider. The other option, of course, is every year we have that page sponsored. We have a pride of place set of little badges at the top, which we are offering in exchange for sponsorship. And if you go to the same page, wpbuilds.com/black, you'll see some little yellow buttons at the top entitled Get Pride of Place Now. Well, if you want to be featured and have your product have some sort of exclusivity on that page, please feel free to do that. The other thing to mention is I'm trying to encourage people during the course of the podcast, if there's something that you're interested in, rather than going and posting on social media about it, I'd really appreciate it if you use the commenting system on WordPress. So if you've been triggered by something that you hear today, or you're intrigued and you want to find out some more, head to wpbuilds.com, search for episode number 344, and leave us a comment there. We would really appreciate it. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with The Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by heading to go.me/WP Builds. That's go.me/WP Builds. And we sincerely, truly thank GoDaddy Pro for their ongoing support of the WP Builds podcast. Okay, as I said at the top of the show, we're featuring Dan Knauss today. He's from Solid WP, which was formerly iThemes, and he's talking to us today about hardening WordPress. This is the 4th out of 4 episodes in which we feature WordPress security. We, in the past, have gone to great lengths to mention the fact that we don't really want to stand on any particular side and endorse any particular position. And so there were 4 episodes with Calvin Alkan, Akshat Chowdhury, Dan Knauss, which is this one, and Thomas J. Reif. And we put them out in a random order, and the rules of engagement were that no episode was going to be published until all the episodes had been recorded. So this is Dan's position. He's talking about hardening WordPress. So we talk about the importance of WordPress security. We introduce Dan. We have a discussion about the malware madness that sparked these 4 episodes. We compare different security approaches and talk about Solid WP's approach. And we also talk about the verification of advanced malware capabilities. And we actually get into the other episodes as well, and we talk about those. And also about Solid WP and what caused the rebrand from iThemes. So this is an episode which stands not in isolation, but with 3 others, and I hope that you enjoy it. I am joined on the podcast today by Dan Knauss. Hello, Dan.
Hi, Nathan. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Nice to have you on. We are going to be recording a podcast episode today all about security. There will be mention of certain security products. This is going to fall in a kind of mini-series almost of WordPress podcasts that I'm doing with various people who have an interest in the security side of things. Given that we're talking about security and vulnerabilities and all of that gets, well, at least can get fairly technical, I think, Dan, it might be a good idea at the beginning just to give us your bio. Who do you work for? How long have you been using WordPress? What's your background in tech and all of that? So over to you.
Sure. It's been a long time. Currently, I'm a technical content generalist, and I get into a lot of things beyond writing and editing. But you'll see my byline coming up at the iThemes brand. We're going through a rebranding in public where we will end up in a few months' time as Solid WP, after which point iThemes will be history, a large part of WordPress history, I guess. But the products and the people behind them are largely unchanged, going back 10 years and more. My own history with WordPress goes back to the beginning. I'm one of those Generation X WordPress people who got into open source and web design at the very beginning in the 90s, and then when things like movable type, and did a lot with Joomla for a long time, and a bit with Drupal and some things that are no longer with us, but probably influenced WordPress a lot, like text pattern. Was always interested in WordPress right from the beginning, and client work led to using it kind of as a blog initially, adjunct to another CMS or something like that, or an e-commerce platform. And then it just became the way to do just about anything, probably around 2008 to 10. And have done a lot of client work, a lot of projects of my own, building things with WordPress, and then previously worked with Post Status for many years, more and more with David Bissett and Michelle Frechette there, who's a colleague at Stellar WP, the parent for iThemes and the Solid brand and many others. So I've been thinking and writing about and talking with people in the WordPress community for quite some time.
Yeah, that's an amazing history, isn't it? Oh, bravo. What a lot you've done. That's amazing. Can we just go on to the Solid WP rebrand just for a couple of minutes? Because I'm sure that many people will know about that. But equally, maybe there'll be some people thinking, oh, hang on a minute, iThemes is going away. What's going on there? What's the reasoning behind that, and which brands are being folded up underneath this new Solid WP brand?
Right. It's just iThemes that's going in there. The reason that we're dropping, the little lowercase I and the focus on themes was where that company was in the beginning. We're no longer doing themes. Had one of the earliest builder themes.
Yeah, it was great.
But now, Cadence WP has taken off and is part of the Stellar WP portfolio, and they are a tremendous theme. Use them at Post Status and use quite a lot with Stellar WP products. So we're really focusing on what Solid implies, the foundational products that have really come along, especially iThemes Security, which will become Solid Security. And that will be part of a suite where we bring along the next iteration of what was Backup Buddy, Solid Backups, and then there's a management, somewhat of a SaaS, Solid Central, which replaces iThemes Sync, and these all flow together into a single suite where you can log in and manage security and see what's going on with your site in terms of SEO, its security, and run backups or restore a backup archive onto a new site or something like that.
Yeah, I guess if you're fresh into WordPress, themes are not quite what they once were. When iThemes began, that was really plugins and themes were the buzzwords, weren't they? And if you're no longer doing themes, and you know that's really now being handled by Cadence, I guess it doesn't really make too much sense to have that confusing word in the title of the company. So what was it? It's going to be it's going to be solid backups, plural. It's going to be solid security, I think you said, which was iThemes security, and the sync, the iThemes sync is becoming solid central, right?
Right.
Nice.
And there's also Solid Academy, which continues iThemes training, where Nathan Ingram, with his weekly live streams and training courses, provides a continuity there with the great community he's brought along. We've got a lot of freelancers and agency people and people who are building things with WordPress who are coming along with Solid Brand too. We're foundational website that's security hardened and ready to go is really important to them.
It's kind of on the surface, it seems like it would be a fairly simple thing to do, to rebrand a company from one name to another. You know, you swap out some logos and you're done. Of course, the reality is probably really anything but. You've got to forewarn all of your customers that something's about to change so they don't freak out when they see a load of differently named plugins suddenly within their WordPress install. But also, I'm guessing just things like rewriting the documentation so that it's all now correct and branded correctly. There must be, well, weeks and weeks and weeks of work in this.
Yes. I've been on it for a while. I came into working on this with Stellar back in November, December last year. And yeah, there's so much older content that needs to come along. And anyone who's done a migration of an older site, it's all that. Plus, you've got to do something with all the references to an older brand and the redesign that goes into that.
Yeah, and all of the search engine stuff that needs to be done so that it gets picked up correctly. Yeah. So we're going to talk a bit about security today. Obviously, we will in the future be talking about solid security. That's the plugin and the tool, if you like, that you're obviously most familiar talking about. But just a quick word for the audience members. This, like I said, is going to be in a like a little mini series, if you like. I've spoken to 3 other people, and I'm going to randomly put these episodes out in no particular order. But they all have interesting positions about security and the effectiveness or otherwise of the product that they have or the product that they've been inspecting. So this really drops into that whole conversation. But let's kick it off, Dan, with just your thoughts on the state of security. What are the kind of things that a typical WordPress user, aka somebody that's listening to this podcast, what are the things that they need to be thinking about when we talk about website security?
Well, I think one of the first things people run into when they've started building sites with WordPress, either their own, but especially for other people, and they, as you typically do, a good business model is to get into some kind of management, maintenance, ongoing, where you might have a monthly recurring revenue model based on providing support and maintenance to your clients. WordPress, ever since, I think it became most valuable to me for client work when auto updates came in. And now we have a really complicated and interesting supply chain situation of where did this plugin come in? Does this premium plugin update separately? Things that are coming out of the plugin repo. So running updates and managing those and compatibility with everything else you're doing becomes something you don't want to lay onto the clients that you're serving, and it becomes part of agency work or freelancer work. And we want to reduce the overhead and risk involved in that. I think as anyone learns quickly in the WordPress community, that running updates in a timely fashion is really critical, even when there's not a security release. But there often are, and they're just looking from in my work, looking at the statistics and looking at Patchstack's database over time. We have more patched and unpatched in the initial disclosure vulnerabilities coming out, and it's almost always plugins. There's some degree themes. WordPress core is really solid, and if there are any issues there, those get handled. And most really well-supported plugins and themes, you could say that too. But there's always a little gap period where there could be an exploit for something that has more than 1 million active installs that you're using, and there are people and bots out looking for ways to exploit those. So that's where we come in, trying to assist with that.
Yeah. I think it could be broadly stated that I'm probably going to talk about iTheme security, even though we now know it's going to become solid security. But the solution that you have, I think I could probably categorize it under one word, and that would be hardening. So firstly, am I using the right word there? Because I won't carry on down that line if that's the wrong way to classify it.
No, that's a very good word. The new icon that comes with it is a shield. And
nice. Yeah.
Layers of protection, and hardening is a very good metaphor.
Yeah. Because in the WordPress space, as you will find if you listen to the other episodes, there's a whole different variety of approaches to WordPress security. So we have plugins, much like your own, which hardens the website, aka it tightens things up. There's some typical things which a website hacker may well go after, and your solution attempts to lock those down a little bit, and we can talk about what those things are in a minute. Then there's other things like, firewalls and things like that, which are an entirely different approach. So let's get into that. Let's get into what is it that your solution, what is it that it does, what does it harden, what does it lock down?
Well, there are a number of different layers, and I really like the new interface we'll be rolling out, because it has kind of walks you through your setup and helps you identify, well, on this particular site, it's unique. What does this client need? What does this website call for? What's an adequate level of security here? And helping you figure that out will walk you down a path. I mean, do you need to make all your users use passkeys or two-factor authentication, or just some of them? And one of the nice features we've had for a long time is the ability to create custom groups. And I think seems very simple, but it's great for people who are doing the kind of close client work. You can set a security policy, which is really a key part of, I think, risk management, and definitely more people who are concerned with liability and prevention. Looking at your staff, looking at your users, if it's a community site, who here is getting more privileges, and we should classify them as higher risk, and maybe prohibit anyone from using recycled passwords or passwords that have appeared in a breach. We can set up rules like that. But we could also give them the option or make it mandatory that you must set up two-factor authentication, have a CAPTCHA on the login, or switch over to passkeys, which we're really proud to have brought as for the first plugin to do that with.
Yeah,
with
I remember
WordPress.
that was a pretty amazing step. Good job. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted. You carry on.
No, go on. That's fine. That user-level hardening, individual users, what they have to go through to get in is really, that login screen is a key point, and we can harden that as well, keeping an eye on it for brute force login attempts, locking that all down. And then, aside from a lot of other tweaks you can do to WordPress to make it harder to hack into, reducing the attack surface. we are bringing out a new firewall that's a new feature for us that's very integrally related to our partnership with Patchstack and using their virtual patches. And that really closes the door on vulnerabilities. We have a version management tool that helps you understand, this hasn't been updated. This is a concern. This theme or this plugin here has a security update, or it's landed in a vulnerability database. What do we do now? Well, now the great answer is we've got a firewall that's handling our DDoS type attacks and also preventing anyone from trying an exploit on a known vulnerability that may not even have an official patch yet. And that's coming in from Patchstack's great work. They're a wonderful partner. So we're offering that to our users, and that's really going to add a lot of peace of mind, I think, for security.
So that's curious, isn't it? Because from the outside, it might look as if Patchstack and Solid Security are kind of commercial rivals in a way, but there's an overlap there, there's a sweet spot which you managed to find where you can integrate with things that they have. They can get to be part of your suite, but that you're not treading on each other's toes. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the great things about the WordPress community, where there's a lot of cooperation, and that whole co-opetition thing that we're able to do. Their expertise is available to us too. It's great to be able to learn and talk it through our combined Slack channel. And what they've done is quite a bit different than what we offer. I think their approach is aimed at a different set of customers, but there's definitely huge synergies, and their goals are tremendous to help secure open source software, not just WordPress. I think their sites are much larger than that, but we all have the same purpose of increasing security and bringing greater confidence that when you're using open source platforms like WordPress, they're going to be solid and secure.
So, nice. There's a perfect overlap there with the word solid. That's good. But in terms of the collaboration that you've got with Patchstack, then, is that it? So the idea of a firewall, is that a new thing entirely in your security suite, or is that something which you've had for a little while, but you've now just, you're beefing it up? You've got a better option, if you like, with Patchstack. Yeah, or like I say, is it just something brand new?
That's rather quite new, especially how we present it in the interface. There has been firewall-like features in the sense that we notice when there's a bot that's slamming passwords into your login and block that, and then look across all the network of our entire users and recognize, this thing's hitting a lot of sites, so let's just send a rule to everyone that blocks it. Patchstack does something similar on a huge level, where they're watching the whole ecosystem and developing firewall rules that say, someone's trying to exploit this new vulnerability. Let's prevent that kind of query and send everyone who's using Patchstack service, and including Solid security users, a firewall rule, essentially. Firewall is kind of a useful metaphor for thinking about it. Cloudflare does things like this on a higher level, and I think we've usually avoided the language of firewalls because there would be a technically correct case for, and still is, that this is often best done at the server level, and you're at a good host, your server and your network is firewalled on a hardware level and by similar software that's looking for bad queries. So they never ever even hit your WordPress install, and you're not using hosting resources on your web application to do this work. But this is a nice balance for us because it's very targeted. We're not trying to cover, every vulnerability from 10 years ago. We're just getting the confidence that, hey, there's there's a vulnerability and some code we're running. They haven't quite got a patch yet, or we can't implement it. There is an update, but we can't do it yet because we haven't tested and we don't know if it's going to break the site. So we need a little window here. We need a little extra time. That virtual patch is going to come down automatically and go into an effect. And if anyone tries to exploit that vulnerability, even though you theoretically have it, no, they're not going to get in. They're blocked right there. So this really closes the door. If you've done the due diligence with your user hardening, you know who your users are, you're managing them, you've done other hardening, you're running updates in a reasonable way, this is going to close that last potential higher risk area.
Given that Patchstack is obviously they're a company, they're in the WordPress ecosystem, but they also have a commercial slant to them. The question I've got really next would be: is that particular feature, is that going to be something that you would need to pay for additionally, or does it just get bundled in? In other words, can you kind of like toggle on and off the firewall as part of your billing, or is it just, if you've got the security, solid security, that comes with it?
It does. It comes right with it. Nice. And we're dropping our pro language, and we're simply selling solid security, and that is the premium product that would formerly be called Pro, but the version Solid Security Basic, which would be the differentiating term. If you go into the plugin repository at wordpress.org and find us there, we're working on rebranding and rolling that whole update out. So what you would download there would still have all the essential features. What changes with the firewall is we're following kind of how Patchstack works. If you're using it for free, you get patches that aren't up to the minute. They are so good that they've got kind of a 48-hour window where there are vulnerabilities that have not yet been publicly announced but have been known about, and they have a solution. There may be a patch coming from the plugin or theme owner, and there's a window of time where our paid users will be covered even for that. That's a very small kind of specialized audience that may really need that. If you have a ton of traffic, you're potentially a target, or your sense of your risk level is high. You probably want the best protection that you can get that's going to close that risky level even further. But for the person who's trying it out or using it at a basic level, they're still getting the firewall with really, I would say, well beyond adequate protection there. So we don't want to have features where they don't really deliver because you're not yet a paid subscriber.
Right. So there's going to be solid security, and that in effect is like the pro version. Then there's going to be a repo version where it's free, but there's a difference in the firewall setup in that, as per Patchstack's rules, there might be a slight delay of a number of days or something like that between the release of the patch and if you're on the pro version, which is now just called Solid Security, you get that right off the bat. As soon as it's created, you have it. And if you're on the free version from the repo, maybe not quite immediately.
Right.
Okay.
And I don't think that would apply when there's like a 0-day exploit that everyone's aware of, and it's really bad. Everyone in the community is going to try to help everyone secure a situation like that as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
This is not that.
There was we're recording this right at the beginning of August. I'm not entirely sure when this episode is going to air, but we're recording it in August 2023. Over the last few weeks, possibly months, maybe, there's been some interesting back and forth dialogue on social media in particular about certain security related issues. So obviously, we know where you're coming from. We understand that you're representing Solid, but those other companies, they'll have their chance in their episodes as well. But I do want to touch on that. And if you've got anything you want to add to that conversation, anything that you've discovered recently, or just really stating your position about why you think your product hits the right balance of what a security plugin should be doing.
Right. I'm really proud, and I think we all are really proud of the product, which owes a lot to our longtime lead developer, Timothy Jacobs, being really ethically focused and really aligned with open source values, where we don't add features that we don't have the highest confidence are really adding security and really doing security. There are a lot of other things that are often bolted on to security plugins that I would say they're not really security tools. Like the malware scanner is what came up recently as a feature that we have never included and feel ever more justified in doing that, because it's really a cleanup. We want to prevent people from having hacked sites where you need to have someone detect, there's been a compromise, there's some malware on here. That's exactly what we want to prevent. That would be a security failure. So that's a separate concern of cleanup. And in the past, we've recommended companies that do that, like Securi, and also going back a ways, We Watch Your Website, which is Tom Rafe's organization, and he recently, along with some work that Calvin Alkin and Snicko and others were doing with Patchstack, kind of looking in and verifying what they were showing, was that there is now advanced malware that if it lands on your site, it's able to look and see, you're running a security plugin with a malware scanner. Let's defeat it in some way. And they showed there are a couple of Calvin did this, where there are a couple of techniques like whitelisting where the malware is and what it's doing, so the scanner will never pick it up. And there are a variety of methods, and Calvin provided not only proof of concept and published about that. Tom Rafe's work with We Watch Your Website, where he's doing active intrusion detection and doing that at a huge scale. He had hard numbers on here's how many sites were compromised with this vulnerability, and we saw the malware take out defensive efforts of security plugins that do offer a malware scanner. So as that technology becomes compromised, it's something we would drop. If we find a feature that's not useful anymore, we don't want to do that. And fortunately, we've never had malware detection that really can only with high confidence be effectively deployed from the server level. If you're running a malware detection program inside WordPress, inside the same PHP instance where the infection is, it's too late. The call is coming from inside the house.
Yeah. So just to give, again, if you're listening to this podcast in isolation, if you haven't listened to one of the previous episodes, or maybe circumstance will be that this episode is the first one that I put out, I don't know. But I have also spoken to Calvin, who you just mentioned. I've spoken to Thomas, who you just mentioned. They'll be on episodes giving those pieces of data to you, dear listener, so you'll be able to hear what they've got to say about it. But we also spoke to Akshat Chowdhury from, several companies, but let's go with Malcare, because that's the one probably in question here the most. So if you want to get some different context around that, or you just want to hear what these numbers are and why they think it matters, then tune in to those other episodes. Is your position then that if really that not a firewall, a malware scanner, because people like Thomas and people like Calvin have been able to kind of open the box there and demonstrate particular examples of how it can be bypassed, if you like. It's fairly technical. We won't go into the technicalities of it. You can find that in the other episodes. For you, then, does that mean that that kind of thing, a malware scanner, is universally not worthwhile? Or is it more a case of, well, it was interesting that somebody managed to find an exploit, but maybe they'll patch that in such a way that it can't happen again? Or is your position more that, well, the way that it works means that it can never really be patched and trusted?
Yeah, it's really the latter case, and Calvin is correct. It was great to learn from him and Thomas what they're seeing. It confirmed things that I'd heard anecdotally from other people and in my own experience had run into. I think fundamentally flawed is the phrase that he used, and I adopted too. I wrote a piece called "Why WordPress Malware Scanners Are Worthless," and that's really not an exaggerating claim there, because it is a fundamental flaw to try to catch, really to try to build a fence inside the house rather than to have a security line of security that's well outside. And when you set up an application firewall inside the application, that's essentially what you're doing. You're looking for detecting someone who's already gotten in, and it also adds quite a performance burden potentially. Some people see these things and it makes them nervous and like, oh, I need to run this scanner all the time, or that, there's a set schedule for them, and that's using your CPU and memory resources potentially quite a lot. I remember 10 years ago or more when these things started to first come out, and just everyone was getting hit with something called the Tim Thumb library. It was a dependency that it was used by a lot of themes and a lot of plugins, and you resorted to just checking to see if you had this file and if it had been exploited. But hosting has improved a lot since then. WordPress core has improved a lot. Plugin development has improved a lot. And if you do all the hardening correctly and your hosting is of good quality, you really don't need those kind of cleanup tools as part of the package of what you're running inside WordPress. And simply because they're being detected, they're being defeated in the wild now, I would just assume it's an arms race always. When hackers are figuring out better and better ways to break in, they're going to learn from each other, and pretty soon almost all malware will probably have some kind of kit just baked into it, and it's just going to look for malware scanners that are known to be installed on many WordPress sites, and we'll just take them out. If we get in, they're done. Yeah,
interesting. So can I just ask, the piece that you just mentioned, it was called, I think I wrote it down correctly, Why WordPress Malware Scanners Are, what did you say, worthless?
Yes.
Yeah. And where do we find that? Was that something that you wrote on your own property, or would that be on what is now the iThemes website?
That's on the iThemes website, okay. iThemes blog, and don't usually have headlines like that, but I felt like that was very justified, and so did it has opened a very good community conversation, I think, and an internal one, and being able to talk with Timothy and Thomas and Kathy Zant too, who's an old security pro, really made me feel confident that was, this isn't like a clickbait overstated thing here. This really is an important issue, and part of our larger ongoing concern is really education. Where what is security? What actions can you actually take that are worth doing, that are really maybe the low-hanging fruit of WordPress security when you set up a site, and then what things really are so iffy it may not be worth your time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for explaining all of that to us. That's really, really intriguing. So we now know that if you are looking for iThemes, it won't be around for too much longer. You're going to be looking at solid WP in the near future. Dan, where do we find you? If you've got a Twitter handle or, a personal website that you want to share, or whatever you like, where can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm still largely on Twitter. I've enjoyed the WordPress community there. I don't know what's coming next. I don't even want to acknowledge the brand change. what the call
that was
this
very
thing.
much not in the open.
Yeah, I'm Dan _Knauss on Knauss on Twitter, and yeah, it's been a long, lovely time with the kind of WordPress learning and exchanges that happen there, but maybe we'll be somewhere else in the future. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, anyway, for now, Dan, really appreciate you chatting to us about your position on WordPress security. That's really, really interesting. I hope that people listening to it get in touch and give you their views. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. I hope that you enjoyed that. Very nice chatting to Dan today, all about WordPress security and hardening your WordPress website. That wraps up our little mini-series all about WordPress security. Hopefully you've enjoyed those 4 episodes. Don't go away, though. Stay tuned because we will be back for normal service. We will have normal interviews and a cycle of podcast episodes with David Wormsley. So hopefully you'll stick around for that. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by going to go.me/WP Builds. And thanks once again to GoDaddy Pro for their ongoing support of the WP Builds podcast. Okay, we'll be back next week. Hopefully you will enjoy the week. Hopefully you'll join us for This Week in WordPress on Monday. If you want to know anything about that, you can go to the wpbuilds.com website and you'll be able to search for This Week in WordPress. We've got absolutely loads of them, but it's a live show. And I'm typically joined by 3 other WordPress guests. And come and join us. Join in the commentary. It's a good deal of fun. Okay, hopefully you will have a good week. Stay safe. Here comes some diabolically cheesy music. Bye-bye for now.